Thank you for joining us with the Geneva Center for Security Policy. My name is Ashley Müller, and I'm here today with Ms. Helen Shapiro. Helen has been working in physical risk management and compliance for over 15 years. In the last decade, she has focused on GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, organizational transformation, on mentoring startups in several innovative spaces, and professional transition coaching. She speaks regularly at various events and has been helping the GCSP as a consultant with our GDPR. Helen, thank you so much for taking the time with us here today.
My pleasure. It's not like I'm going anywhere.
Yes, we're all here in confinement. And actually, as we are in this time of uncertainty, as the world reacts to COVID-19, the coronavirus, I've been hearing a lot with my family and friends, my colleagues, a lot of us who are in our organizations or jobs transitioning online, who haven't necessarily been digital before. We have a lot of fears and a lot of worry about our data and about privacy. Should we be afraid during this time of uncertainty?
I get this question rather a lot. It is this time of uncertainty makes us more panicky in general. There's a lot of unknowns. Indeed, the fact that we are so dependent on digital tools in order to conduct our daily lives, whether payments or purchases in general, getting, ordering things, or doing our online work in the virtual office, this has brought indeed our data protection and our digital identities into focus. So yes, it is much more frightening. However, this is not new. This is something we had before. It's just now, it's another thing that we are aware of a little more acutely, and we need to suddenly deal with that, or we feel we suddenly need to deal with that. So I think that this is maybe a good opportunity to shift our focus a little bit away from the gloves and the masks and the general hygiene and look at the different type of hygiene. Each and every one of us can start thinking about, how do I secure my digital identity? How do I get a little bit more conscious, more knowledgeable, more secure in what I'm doing when it comes to me, myself, who is also online?
Thank you. So Helen, if I were to go and speak with my colleagues or my friends or family, what kind of tips should I share with them? How do we safeguard ourselves? What would you recommend?
Well, I think this is a process, like any educational process, and I think we need to first have awareness and share this awareness, and also get informed. There are plenty of free courses out there. We can have like a 1-hour video from different venues about what is cyber hygiene. How can I have the simple tasks or simple things that I do in life, like password management, for example. I always ask when I talk in front of people, whose password is 0000, or their birthday, or their dog's name, or their mother's maiden name, or whatever it is. And then there's always some hands that come up. And then we use those passwords in all kinds of places. And then when things get hacked, even if it's an old account, it might still have a password that we use somewhere else. And so we are kind of wide open. Having the tools, the basic tools to deal with this, the sensitivity of what type of information is out there, who am I as a digital person, how do I protect myself? As a person, not as an IT wizard. What do I need to do? What kind of things do I pay attention to in terms of software, in terms of hardware, in terms of what I transfer to my kids, in terms of the household, friends, family? These are simple things that we can start doing as a process. And as all processes, as in any change in life, it takes time. But since we're stuck at home, we might as well do it. And since we're stuck at home only with the computers, we really should be doing this. It will also lower our level of anxiety, because the next thing that happens is that we have a lot of talk about authorities using our handheld devices in order to track us, in order to be able to plot the development and transmission of the virus. And this makes sense, and this is in the public interest, and this is something that we know that is in part of the public health perhaps strategy. But we're kind of unsure about what is our data doing out there, you know? So it's good to be a little bit more educated, to have less anxiety, to know what questions to ask, to get the right information from the right places, and change your passwords. Have a good password management process.
I think that's a great tip. Very, very practical because, well, I won't say what I have for my passwords, but with that being said, I think it's very important to keep doing that, to remain with a good cyber hygiene, as you've mentioned. You touched on this idea of traceability with the government, with companies, data companies, really offering us a chance to help us, because we are all concerned about our health safety, and we want to know if we've been in touch with anybody who has maybe been in a vicinity where someone did have the coronavirus. And so somehow, amongst, at least in the certain forums and media headlines I've been following, there are some who are very much now willing to give up their data because it's for a good cause. Kind of shifting the perspective a bit from a few months ago when we were all crazy about our data privacy, rightfully so. Now, what is your take on this shift of narrative, and why is that shift happening? And may I also ask, do you think we can get our data back?
Right. Okay. So you maybe remind me about getting our data back afterwards, because just in case I get off track here. So the first thing I would say to this is that we have not really, from my experience, been very crazy about who gets our data. We've been very sloppy as a whole. That's what I see in my line of work, with the people I meet and talk to, with my friends, with, everything I see around me. But we don't like being told what to do, of course. So now we suddenly, like, oh, gloves, oh, masks, oh my God, disinfect this and that. It infringes on what we perceive of as our personal freedom and choices. Now, let's put something, I think, in perspective. Our devices can be traced whether we want it to be traced or not. Nobody's asking our permission at this time. And this is legal because also the GDPR itself, the General Data Protection Regulation, which is the European Union's overall umbrella legislative framework for data protection of individuals, even that recognizes that actions in the public interest and in order to protect people's vital interests might need to collect and store and use private data, and do not necessarily need your permission. So this is fine. And we'll put the do I get it back, or do I get back control afterwards, okay? So I think that it's important to know what is being used. And different governments, different authorities are using slightly different algorithms, parameters. They define the way, or rather, they implement their policies and the strategy for public health, especially for the pandemic, slightly differently. As all governments have a slightly different flair, even if they claim to abide by the same principles. So it really is very much culture dependent, society dependent. This is all contextualized. The challenges with this kind of action are quite big. One of them is that you don't know how far it goes, because governments and authorities, hospitals, whoever, hospitals are notorious for bad cyber hygiene, but never mind. You never know who hosts the data. You never know who's going to use the data for statistics, to do the analysis. Where is it going? And how is it going to be used? And so the authorities and public health actors do need to have the degree of scrutiny, of governance, of critical thinking, checks and balances, in order to assure that they are not just inviting trouble, basically, not to mention breaking the law. This is something that should have been ingrained already in the practice of such authorities. Do I think that's realistic? Probably not very. Do I think that the mechanisms are there? Yes, they are. They are there. The legislature is there, and then the powers that be interpreted, per what is going on there and what the local member state or country or whatever politically and socially is striving for. So in terms of what we can do about that, we cannot do much. You can turn off the locator, you can do whatever you want, they can still find you. Don't worry about that. That's not up to you, really. Okay? It doesn't mean you shouldn't change your password, huh? Let's, make sure you can do what you can do. It also means you, for example, need to be aware of phishing, more phishing than usual. All kinds of crazy websites and offers. So we give you this insurance, we will do that for you. All kinds of strange emails that might, or texts, or WhatsApps that might show up and say, hey, this just came from the press, or this is something that came from the official university hospital in city, whatever. Spread it around. If you don't know who sent it, if you don't trust it, if it looks like something that's not 200% kosher, just don't touch it. And don't perpetuate these kinds of malware chains or malicious chains or phishing chains. This is something that can easily, by simple inattention, become rather dangerous to either you or you and all the contacts that you have in your desk somewhere, or your children, and your family, dependents. So limit the use to those trusted people that you know, and if something looks crazy, call them. I know we don't call people anymore. Call them and say, hey, did you send me this? Oh, what is this link? I don't really feel comfortable clicking on it. Remember always, the rule of thumb is if it's too good to be true, it is not true.
So it's clear that I have a digital footprint and various stakeholders do have access to my data. Will they misuse it? Can they misuse it? Is my fear justified?
You are justified in being concerned. You should not be afraid, because just being afraid without being able to do a lot about it is counterproductive. It just gives you stress. Stress is not good. We have enough things to be stressed about. It is important, though, to understand that the data that organizations, and I'm talking about now in the context of the COVID-19 here, that personal data that has been collected and processed and is being stored and used due to legitimate reasons, as we have mentioned before, needs to be protected. It needs to be disposed of in an approved manner. The fact that there is a crisis or a state of emergency or an extraordinary state in a country, whatever the definition is, that does not give the government, the authorities, the stakeholders a carte blanche to go rogue and to just disregard the law. We still have our rights. We have civil liberties. We have there are supposed to be policies and processes in place. And by the way, anybody who is interested to lower their anxiety level can also go to the WHO, to the World Health Organization's website, and do some of their free online courses that give you insights as to the strategy for public health management, especially in pandemics, so that you get a sense of what different authorities are trying to accomplish. And again, everybody with their own little flair and color and to different degrees of success, and you're better informed. So no carte blanche to go rogue. They have to abide by the law.
And just before we end, as a final question, I want to ask you, what are your final insights, and what do you want to leave us with?
Very good. I want to leave us with 3 pillars and also an observation. So the 3 pillars are that with any policy and with digitization and private data that is out there, there are three elements that we need to remember. We need to have good governance. We have to have good collective intelligence, and we need to have good general knowledge. And we can, each of us, ask ourselves, where am I / my organization? And we all have many organizations. One is the family unit, another one is our community, our workplace, and all of these interlace. So does the data. And so we can ask ourselves, where do I stand in each of these? We should ask ourselves. And this is my observation. Maybe this crisis has brought forth many different factors that we are suddenly alarmed about. One of them is my digital self, my digital identity, and what do I do? What happens with all this data out there? It's totally abstract. It's totally up to the techies. They speak languages nobody understands, right? But we must develop the sense for digital. We must. Our future is about that. Our entire lives are pretty much online. So the same way we take care of putting the mask on, putting the gloves on, getting our kids to wash their hands properly, and for a long time, and with enough soap, same way we look left, right, or in England, right, and when we cross the road, the same way we need to treat cyber hygiene and data privacy.
Helen, thank you so much for your time here with the GCSP and your valuable, valuable insights. It's been a great pleasure. Yes, and I just want to thank you again. And if you are interested in finding out more about Helen, please click the link below and you can be directed to her website so you can find out all the things that she's involved in and get further insights, and even contact her if you would like another conversation with her to go deeper. So
thank you. Keep safe.
Everyone, yes, be safe and keep your hygiene in the cyber world up to date. Thank you.
There you go.